I designed a pair of earrings.
They're very pretty.
And April made them for me.
Okay, ladies, we're gonna go ahead and get started. And we're gonna start with sharing our data from our previous initiatives, looking at fourth grade specifically, but K-5 in general, with the 3 goals that we were looking at, checking the lesson plans to make sure that they were teaching the standards, looking at their problem of the day, making sure that they're using manipulatives, and then also making sure that they were implementing Freckle in their classroom and that they were using manipulatives with Freckle. We plugged in some time last Friday to try to help with allowing more time to go in and to do the observations. And I'll start with sharing the observations that I did. And instead of completing the form, I was looking twofold when I was in the classroom. I was looking to see what they were implementing from our first initiative, but I was also looking at best practices, collecting data for where we were moving to next. And we did have the strategic PLC when we were looking at best practices and the key pieces that we wanted them to look at with Marzano's high yield strategies. So I emailed myself notes, and my first focus was those 3 pieces that I mentioned, and then my second focus was looking at the best practices. So in the first classroom that I observed in, the students were in their stations. They were doing guided math with the teacher at the table, and one group of the students worked on Freckle. The little piece is not necessary. And one little girl was working with her jacket over her head, and I just knew she probably was on something she shouldn't have been. So I walked over gently and lifted up her jacket, and she was actually on Freckle doing what she was supposed to do. So that they were doing Freckle. I did not observe the math journals when I was in that classroom. They'd already completed that portion. And then I did look at her lesson plans, and her lesson plans were planned according to the standards. When looking for best practices, looking at the pieces that we targeted, looking to see if the teachers focused on goals and objectives, if the teachers had a focus on vocabulary, if the teacher was providing feedback. There were several things that I did not see, but this will be used as our baseline data after we look at the plan of teaching teachers what the best practices are, teaching them what we'll be looking at when we're doing walkthroughs and what we'll be focusing on. Then I'm sure that we'll see some increase and improvement in these practices. The second class that I looked in, the students were working on matching time. They were doing that whole group. The teacher was providing feedback. She provided specific feedback about the hour hand and the minute hand, and students received a treat. As I walked around the room looking to see how the teacher was tracking the students' progress, I did notice a reading chart that was on the wall where the students received a treat if they completed a certain amount of reading. And I did not stop in the first classroom to ask the teacher how she was tracking her students' progress and her growth. So that may be a piece that we talk about before we leave today. And I will be making some revisions for the walkthrough tool. The best practice tool as it is now is just a straight yes or no. But I think there needs to be another bullet that says not observed, or even a space to add feedback. Not observed, however, I had an interview with the teacher and this happened. So I think that form needs to be revised. In the third classroom that I was in, the children were working on Freckle. They were doing the morning work. They were using manipulatives. I did observe them doing problem of the day, and they were using the fraction tiles with their problem of the day. And the activity that they worked on was comparing fractions, and that was aligned to the teacher's standards. The teacher does have a place for her I can statements, but they were difficult to see. So as we work with the teachers on the best practices that we're looking for, we'll add in some tips that will help the I can statements be more productive for what she wants them to be for. The other little comment there, she did have an EC student in the classroom. Sometimes I see that the EC students may not be doing the same thing that the students are doing, but this teacher differentiated what she was working on. So the student was also working on fractions, although it may have been a different level. And when he completed his activity, he took it to the teacher. She gave him positive feedback. Then she sent him on to do the next activity. So that was a plus to see. Okay.
I went 2 weeks. I saw each of the kindergartners last week and the beginning of this week. I didn't see Jeter until yesterday. What I noticed, I did not use the best practices form. I filled out strategic math lesson rubric is what I used. I did observe Can 2 4 times, 2 last week, and asked Ms. Heilig if it was acceptable to do the back-to-back because she had one group and then another group. I thought she was very strong when I was looking through the strategic math plans. She did, her lessons matched what she was doing. She was using, she used focus, she had the I can statement, she did number talk, problem talk, she modeled it, she had manipulatives. I thought, I took a picture of it. She had these math bags. It's called their toolkits. And the kids, obviously this is something she's implemented for a while, because after they did all the beginning of the number talk and problem of the day, the kids got up, went and got those toolkits, brought them back, and it had a variety of manipulatives in it. And then they started working on that in their math journals. I didn't see the rubric for the math journal, and then I looked back to see if she had been using that. And the other thing I didn't see and I didn't ask was the freckle on that. But I thought it was high standards. It was the students were engaged. It was not any transition problems from the carpet to individual. And then she quickly started going, and she was a facilitator. And one of the things I liked about her was her questioning. She had the kids still struggling. Like, she wasn't just giving them an answer. She was more guiding them when they were working on those problems and asking more why questions. She had an anchor chart. She used that, and then at the end, which was impressive, she did have the kids model it with the manipulatives on their solutions. So she did the whole thing, and I was in there about 40 minutes when it was all, I stayed for the whole thing. I didn't go last week to Mr. Smith's with Ms. Peck because Mr. Klutz was in there, but I did come back this week to observe. I didn't see the freckle and writing paper at the time I went in, but I did see him working with a small group and asking some of these questions, and he was using the centers. He brought the crate out you had provided him. He said, we have a system in place. And the kids, again, they were managed, but they were also working in that aspect. When I went to kindergarten last week, I saw 4 different lessons. So when I went into Miss Key's class and she started her problem, she did her number talk and was talking, she was doing number bonds. She had the number 9 and they were breaking it up different ways, 4 plus 5 and 6 plus 3. She allowed the students to show that and they talked about it. Then they went back to the desk and in their math journal she passed out a copy of what the problem of the day was. The manipulatives she provided were the students themselves. So what they did was they got up and she did a group of 6 and then she did 9 students, and then she made 6 go on this side and 3 go on that side, and then the students drew their own manipulatives in it. So the students were doing a lot of their own pictures, but I didn't hear them give their explanations. When I went over to Ms. Jeter's class, she was using goldfish, the multicolor goldfish. And so that was great. In her lesson, she was using the vocabulary, she was using modeling it. The students were showing her, she was correcting them. But the only concern I had was she was not using Tim frames. She was making the children draw their own Tim frames. And so while she did the lesson itself, she modeled and explained it and had the goldfish, and she showed them. Then they went back and they started working on it. Ms. Veach and she were going around doing that. But then she had them draw the Tim frames, and I suggested we'll give you copies for that because they did struggle with that. Then I went to Miss Weber's class, and she'd obviously been working with the math coach, with working with questions, because she had the problem of the days on a sheet and everybody had it. She had the Tim frames, and they were using snap cubes. And so that's a lower class, a lot of lower students probably, and so they were struggling with being able to talk it. So it looked like it was at the beginning phases of learning how to do that with manipulatives, but she was trying. She seemed frustrated, but she was trying it still. And Miss Watson was actively helping her as well with taking it from the anchor chart, putting them into small groups, and then helping them with those questions. And Miss Ryan, she had kindergarten and first grade. She modeled it. They had 10 frames, and then they had the 2 colored chips, and she modeled that for them. The students were doing that. I couldn't decipher, I was trying to remember who was first grade and who what, but there were 4 different lessons on that. So I don't know.
Okay. That's good.
Check.
Okay. Next.
Well, I only saw Miss Brine, and I looked,
While you're pulling that up, I did talk to kindergarten during their planning yesterday about them, as they were discussing the different places they were in their lessons. So I asked them if they felt it would be easier if they stayed on the same topic or the same idea. So they talked about their students needing different things and why they were able to verbalize and explain why they were doing different things. So we'll see how that goes. Gita was saying that her students still needed to work on and may have been making 10, and Weber had a different thing that she was working on. Miss Keys was absent, and Miss Ryan, I think, was at PBO training, but they explained why they were in different places.
I get that. I think that's okay, but I think when we come back from spring break, I'm going to reiterate that I expect them to be on the same topics. Even though, because you can differentiate that. You can take a topic and meet the needs at various levels.
And what I've noticed too in meeting with Ms. Jeter, as my mentee, a lot of times she'll put things in her plans that she's not necessarily doing. So we've had that conversation about making sure what you put in your plans is what you're doing. I think she's using the support from her grade level, and I don't know if she's feeling the need to put it's just a lot of extra things that she's putting in there. So I talked to her about putting in there what you're doing, and then that help her weed out all the extra things that she's putting in there. And then as I go back to using the form and not for my emails next week, I'll add in some of those pieces for the grows and the glows of the things that they need to make sure that they're doing. Like even for Miss Keys, if she's using the students as the models, once the students go to their desk to work independently, then there's probably a lot of students who need the manipulatives right there at their seats. Sorry.
that's okay.
No, I think that's important.
So I focused on the journal in her class. And this was Miss Ryan.
Okay.
Kindergarten. She had the problem. The kids had their journals are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
She
It
does a really good job.
She does a great job. So they had the problem, they had the picture where they had drawn the picture out, and then some of them had the words and label, some of them didn't, so that wasn't consistent, but they were still really good. They were using manipulatives. They had 10 frames and the two-sided counters that they were
Okay.
using. She did ask questions as she was facilitating. She wasn't just giving the answer, but she was asking questions to try to lead them into the answer instead of just giving them the answer. When she was going over the problem of the day and the journal problem, she did highlight, I think two children came up and gave their strategies. And then I don't know about, I didn't see a rubric for her, but I just, for two lows, I put excellent use of journals and manipulatives. What my consideration was maybe giving them sentence frames to aid in their student explanations. So, because I know they have a hard time coming up with a sentence, so
That's
maybe
good.
if they have a sentence frame to work from, then they can
In the think
maybe
tank.
do their explanation better.
That's good. I also talked with the student yesterday too about adding in the sentence frames and how to differentiate that. For one child, all he's gonna put in is the number. For the other children, they can put in 2 words, but we talk about sentence frames also. Okay.
So I observed in Ms. Walter's class in 2nd grade also,
Okay.
and she was doing small group instruction when I got in there. She already finished her number talk for
Okay.
the day. She was working interventions on number sensitivity for students, and she had number lines that she was using with them, and they were trying to determine where the number fell on the number line. She was questioning them and not asking right their questions, but trying to lead them in the direction to find their correct answer. I thought she did a good job with her lesson. The rest of her class was working on Freckle and their stations.
That's great. That's great. Sounds good. It sounds like we're moving, continuing to move forward and making progress. As we look at the other components that we're working on as far as our growth plan based on the survey, we will still continue to observe the focus on the math manipulatives with the math journals, making sure that the teachers are teaching the standards, and then also making sure that they are using Freckle.
Do they have any questions about the standards and how to be taught it? Like when you guys did yesterday's planning, are they asking questions about the standards?
I think some of them are. I mean, like we sit down and look at what does the standard actually say, because I know like Miss Ivy asked me to do a model lesson on theme, but it's really a central message, so we talked about that.
Good, because I think that's what I want cleared up, is I think there's some misunderstandings. And so when we go to teach it, the teachers, and whether it's a veteran teacher, sometimes think, hey, I know how to teach this standard, but it is a misunderstanding.
I think the new math, the way we're doing the new math, has forced them to explore the standards a little bit more, don't you? Would you say that?
Yes, and then some of them are looking at some of the instructional videos
Good.
and looking at how to teach
The more will help you.
concept in a variety of ways.
Okay, good. I'm hoping that they'll continue to ask you questions. Because that's a sign of them willing to learn. But if we're looking at the standards and how they're teaching, and if there's a discrepancy, sometimes it makes me wonder, do they understand what they're supposed to be teaching?
In an area that would need to be a growth in looking at some of the Freckle data will be I guess the implementation piece of it, making sure that they are doing freckle.
That's a good
As I walked through some of the classrooms, I asked the students, do you know what the manipulatives are on freckle? Because we talked in one of our strategic PLC meetings about making them use paper and pencil to work out their problems. I've repeated that
Go ahead.
multiple times, but I haven't seen that taking place. Looking at some third graders yesterday, I did see where one of the little girls used the scratch pad that's a part of freckle to work out her problem. So then I started calling them for table groups to make sure that they knew where the scratch pad was. So even if they're not pulling out that sheet of paper, they're using that scratch pad and they're working out that problem. I think that is sufficient. And if they know where the manipulatives are and they know how to drag a 10 frame over and they know how to drag a number line over and they can use that, I think that's a plus too. But I'm not seeing them use like paper and pencil to do freckle. But I hated to tell the little girl who was using her scratch pad, well, no, you need to get a sheet of paper and a pencil. So if they are using the scratch pad effectively, then I think that will be a plus. But I'm not seeing them as I walk through using paper and pencil with their freckle. As far as like the freckle usage, I've been looking at some of the reports that'll show there's a growth report. There's a report that will show how the students are doing. I had a conversation with the third grade students and actually showed them their report and showed them the red pieces that's showing that they're not doing their very best. We talked about the time that they spent on that freckle assignment. If you did the assignment in 3 minutes and you didn't do so well, then that's probably an indication that you rushed through it. So I've been looking at those reports and I've added one of the reports to the weekly updates for the next week. And I'll probably continue that process so the teachers can see who's making growth in freckle as far as a grade level and who's lagging, not making growth. So that report has already been added. So I'll continue to look at freckle. We'll continue to look at the freckle reports when the teachers are planning. And I think that may help with the consistency of the students showing their work, be it through the freckle scratch pad or paper pencil, but not just guessing.
I think that's a new concept to them, to be honest with you. I think since the iPad initiative, it was allowed from previous staff that's not here, but maybe even still here, that they didn't have to show their work anymore. I don't know if they ever did, but I think that's a learned bad habit. So I think this is something, I'm excited to hear about that because not only with just freckle, but everything that you do, you need to show your work.
Right. And it's been a huge, I'm sorry, Joy. It's been a huge push, since the beginning of the year with the math journals to show your work. So if we keep having these conversations, the children will be able to make that connection. It's not just in your math journal. You need to show your work anytime you're doing your math.
But we have to talk about that.
Right.
So that says to me, we the adults, the instructional leaders, helping them with that transfer.
Yes, and I've said it multiple times. It's in the weekly updates, and when we're in here on Wednesday, it's going to be in my notes to say it every single time, and then talk about ways to do that.
Okay.
So in the freckle webinar that we had,
Yes.
the guy had mentioned having a freckle notebook so that the kids actually
Good idea.
kept their, instead of on the scratch pad, they keep their
Like our math journal have a freckle notebook.
in a freckle notebook.
Okay. So
That might be
we can look at that Wednesday with the teachers too. That's good.
And then we had talked about how they weren't, especially third grade, wasn't using the scratch paper and the graph paper. And one thing that we talked about was possibly doing like a town hall meeting.
Okay.
Where we could, encourage them, this is why you need to use this is what we noticed. And then every time, like I've been into Verhall and Ivy several times this week, and I've talked to them multiple times about, you have to use your paper, you have to read it multiple times, you can't just skim over things. So that's what we're kind of working toward. So I think if we did
Oh, I like that idea. Well, because I was planning to do a town hall when we came back from spring break, because it's a long break. So we always talk about behavior, but let's have that academic, because we don't always have to have that focus of behavior. So we'll start with, here's your behavior. Now let's talk about academics. So if you would help me, give me some key things to say, and we can, so we're all saying the same thing. I'm saying what you're saying in your PLCs to the teachers, and of course if y'all are present, come on in too. But yeah, I think that's a great idea. We'll do it behavior, and then because it's also, remember you and I talked about also EOG strategies, test taking strategies. We can start that dialogue as soon as we come back from spring break. Everything we do, I like it.
That's good. And like you said, they hear us saying the same thing, so no matter which one of us come through their room, we're looking for the same thing.
Yeah.
Are you showing your work? Are you writing it
Can
out?
you
Are
make
you
me
drawing
an
your
anchor chart?
pictures?
Y'all make me an anchor chart, because you know me, I'll come back and I'll take it, and what I'll do is I'll pull it up and make sure, because I gotta make sure I hit the key pieces you're saying. Behavior and academics.
Thank you, ladies.
Excellent.
Good review. We're gonna move into the next portion. And the next portion, I've created a growth plan for our school based on the survey that the teachers took at the end of March on that last work day. So the survey was for teacher empowerment, and there were 3 areas that were the top 3 areas that were the greatest area of needs for our school. One area was the trust and mutual respect. Another area is teacher concerns about leadership issues. And then the third was confident in raising issues and concerns. And I did not share the entire survey in this presentation, but I will email you the link if I have not done that already. The link there are 3 separate surveys, and it was just because I couldn't go beyond the 10 questions per survey. In the free version that I chose to stick with. So I'll email you those links if I have not, but the only data that I shared in this presentation was from those 3 top areas. But Ms. Bryan and I did meet on Tuesday, and we looked at the surveys in their entirety. But the first area that we're looking at is there's an atmosphere of trust and mutual respect in the school, and there were 17.24% that agreed, and then 82.76% that disagreed. So for each one of these areas, I've created a plan, and then we'll have time for you all to share. You can add comments or suggestions, and based on our ending results today, that's the plan that I present to the teacher-led design team next week. For the next question, teachers feel comfortable raising issues and concerns that are important to them. There were 24.14% that agreed, and then 75.86% that disagreed.
Yes, ma'am. I'm gonna take notes on, I'm just gonna say refer to.
You can say yes, and you can say refer, yes, that's fine, and then we'll just put the link right into it. I'm sorry, type your little fingers. Type it away. Okay, and then for the school leadership makes a sustained effort to address teacher concerns about leadership issues. There were 39.29% that agreed, and then 60.71% that disagreed. And in talking with Ms. Bryant, and when we were talking about leadership issues, I want to know more in order to make sure that we're addressing what they feel is a need. I want to know what leadership issues you are referring to. So I'll either send out another survey or sit in on a grade level meeting, or have the grade level chairs to give us a list of the issues that are concerns for you, and then we'll just put them all in a hat or whatever. Oh no, not literally, but we'll look at those concerns to make sure that we're addressing those concerns, because we can address leadership issues if we're thinking they're one thing and they have a wide variety that they're putting under that umbrella. So we will look for more information on leadership issues so we can flesh out what the need is there. Now for the growth plan for the mutual respect and trust, in doing some research, I did research to come up with plans for each one of these components. And anything that we do, we have to make sure that we're using research that even goes back to the survey that was given to the teachers. The survey had to come from a document like the teacher working condition survey that was based on research. So all of the suggestions here are based on research. So one of the activities actually kind of taps into what some of us have been doing already. There's something that's called Hump Day Bump Shout-outs. And they're called Hump Day because they're sent out on Wednesdays. We don't necessarily have to send them out on Wednesdays,
I like it though.
but we're sending out shout-outs to kind of highlight the positive things that we see teachers doing in our building academically, and then also it doesn't necessarily have to be academically, but the more that we can tie it to academics, the more that we'll push to where we need to be as far as meeting growth and meeting growth, period. The activity that will be connected with the Hump Day shout-outs is to keep personal and private, that's separate. I'm gonna jump to the indicators for success and I'll jump right back there. But for the indicators of success, we want to see, we'll take the survey again at the end of the year. The survey that they took at the end of March will serve as our baseline data. We'll take the survey at the end of the year, and I've got a gaudy goal up there, but we're gonna see if we can push for at least 80% of the staff want to move them to the agree side where they feel that they are trusted and respected. Yes, ma'am.
Make a suggestion.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
was just thinking about when I would do things in my classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to keep a tally of who got, or like, look, you know.
Make
we
sure
don't wanna-
everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I wanna make sure everybody's getting recognized, or we're not
Oh,
like
yeah,
recognizing
yeah,
the same people
yeah.
all the time. I'm leaving
Yeah.
somebody out.
The quiet people.
Because
Yeah.
that will create another issue, because then you hear the conversations of favorites, then you hear the conversation of, oh, she's always calling on her or bragging on her.
Yes.
So making sure that we find some bright spots
You need me now?
in various grade levels, in various teachers.
So if there's a way to
Yes.
keep like a Google form or something, just so that we can say, you know, this person's had 5 shout outs this week, this person hasn't had any. But was there something that we saw that could be a shout out or whatever?
But it forces you, it's just like making sure everybody has a chance. And sometimes I don't realize I'm saying the same person over and over. I'm so literal, I'll see something, I'm like, oh, that's great. And then what happens is that does become a favorite or something, and I'm like, wow, I didn't mean for that to happen. And so it gives me purpose to look for something on someone that maybe has not been identified. So I like that idea, yes.
Okay, so we will have a system for that, and I think it
I
may be,
apologize, I've got to go, okay?
okay. I think it's on the next slide, but there is, based on the emails that are sent out, I'll keep screenshots, or I'll talk about when I get to that slide, and I'll keep it with the spreadsheet. When we're looking at us using like the Google Forms and the rubrics and the things that are in Google Drive to pull that data from, we don't always have that data. So it's hard for us to use that tool in a way that it was intended. So I'm gonna use the tool and I'll base it on the emails that I see. So the team can just send out the emails, and then I'll have the spreadsheet that I fill out. So when we come in here, I can just pull up the graph or the chart that'll show the data from the emails. So I did put that in there.
Okay.
The second activity on the work plan is to keep personal and private conversations between parties that are involved behind closed doors. So if there's a situation with a teacher who can't log in because they don't remember their login, and I need to discuss that with Miss McKee, the tech facilitator, and maybe that teacher, but not in open forums, because then that means other people can hear it, and then they talk, and then that plays a role in the lack of trust in the building. So I think those two things will help increase the level of trust and help us to meet our goal of 80%. And what that looks like, what we just said, emails to the staff, acknowledging the positive actions or the positive things that we've seen them do. And I try to do that on Facebook. I used to do it mainly through Facebook and through Twitter, but then I started emailing the whole staff, and several staff members have been doing that anyway, sending out the shout outs. But now, if it is part of our growth plan, it is a strategic plan in place that we're gonna make sure that we implement so that it continues to roll. As far as the plan to help staff feel comfortable raising issues and concerns, they will be submitting weekly grade level minutes, and there'll be a section at the bottom where they list any questions or concerns that they have, and they will send a copy of their minutes or include in the email anybody that's attached to the email. For example, 5th grade is the only grade level right now in the building who submits weekly grade level minutes. And if it's something dealing with technology, they'll put Ms. McKee in it. If it's something that's dealing with a field trip, they may put Ms. Cook in it. We have to make sure that we read those minutes, and if there's a concern or issue or something that they list at the bottom, if it is involving more model lessons for math, then I have to make sure that I reply and get with the teacher who needs that, not make them feel bad about it, but get with them and make sure that we're addressing those questions. So if they feel that they have a platform or they have a way to stress their concerns and ask their questions, and they feel that we have a way of responding in a professional manner, then I think that will help them to see that they can raise questions, and they won't say, I'm not asking that question. They may not feel comfortable asking those questions openly in a staff meeting, but with their grade level, they may feel better submitting those questions on that weekly minute sheet. And if it's a specific question that's targeted to a specific person, then yes, we expect them to put their name. But I don't want them to feel that they have to put their name because it'll be pointed out or singled out. So when I meet with them to talk about this expectation, we won't require them to put names of who said what unless they want specific information. And again, what that looks like, that's just an example of what 5th grade sends in. At my previous school, teachers had a form that they had to fill out with their grade level minutes. 5th grade kind of continue that on their own, and they'll just straight send out an email. So I will leave that up to the grade levels. It doesn't have to necessarily be a form. They just need to communicate with us what their concerns are, and an easy way to do that is through an email of what you talk about and what you need.
My first year as a coach, that was the expectation. They sent out weekly minutes from their grade level minutes, and that everything that you said, that was basically what they did.
Okay, so I think that will be something that we can implement with ease. The next area of need was sustained efforts being made to address their concerns about leadership issues. So the first thing we'll do is get a definition of what they are referring to under that umbrella of leadership issues. And again, helping them to feel comfortable with asking questions. We're going to use the same tool, the grade level minutes, with them submitting any questions that they have. And I see that I've left something undone for the indicators of success. So it will be the same indicators of success. When we do the survey at the end of the year, we want 80% of the teachers to feel more comfortable. We want to see 80% of them agree that they feel their concerns are being addressed. Any questions about that? And that's the same example, the grade level minutes, emailing it to all stakeholders, making sure that if your name is in the email that we address the questions. We answer the questions that are addressed to us, and then a system for the data collection. If our team can continue to send the shout outs to the emails, then I'll be responsible for filling out the Google form.
Will you be going over this in leadership so that everybody knows? Or is this just something that we're doing?
This is something that the strategic team
Okay.
is doing. However, I don't feel that it would be not beneficial to talk to Ms. Woods, that's not here today. I can share this information with Ms. Rusher, and
maybe even teacher friends too.
yes, I'll be presenting this whole,
Okay.
but you're saying allow the teacher-led design team to send out?
Well, I don't know, but just share it with them.
Yes, I'm on their schedule
Okay.
for the next teacher-led design team meeting, and I'll be presenting this school-wide growth plan with them. One of the needs that I feel we have is making sure that the plan comes to fruition, that we're able to do it, to complete it, to implement it. So I think if we continue to send out the emails, I'll do the data keeping part with the Google Doc. I feel like that system will work. Any pros, cons, questions about that?
I think it's good. I wonder if like we put reminders on, like I'm just thinking for myself, I might need to add a reminder to my phone or something like that, just to make sure that, you know what I'm saying?
Yes. My first thought was, let's put it on the weekly updates, but no, that's not. That doesn't need to go there. Any suggestion for system of reminders?
Reminders for what?
Like just
to
for
do general
reminders
or
for like shout outs and,
to do shout outs?
or just say that we, so it
That
doesn't.
the plan doesn't fall by the
Oh.
wayside.
When we first started talking about, or we want to stick to the emailing out of shout outs? Is that like what we wanna?
Yes.
Okay, well then I don't know. Sorry, because my idea is gonna be like, yeah, it's actually not tech related.
What was it?
Well, I just was thinking when you were saying the shout out thing and keeping up with like how many everybody has gotten, if we made a visual where it's kind of like
A
in
chart?
a way staff member of the week, but it's not, because you would have all the photos up and then people could add shout outs to the photo. Does that, no, yeah.
Are you
Then you
saying
would
something
see-
similar like that shout out board that's across from the drink machine and
Nobody ever sees that. Nobody pays attention to that. But I see what you're saying.
You're
Like
a
this would
data
have
board.
like,
a data board.
yeah, like it would have like the person's picture or their name, and the shout outs for them would go with their name, and then you could actually see. Could we do it digitally? I don't know.
So you, okay, you're saying like a bulletin board.
I don't know. It's just a thought, because then you can see like how many, but then that might not go the way you want, because you may see like that somebody has a ton and somebody has 0, but yeah.
I think the tracking should just be for us, and then, what do you think?
Agree. I was thinking you could do it digitally and then put it on the updates, but then I think we might have the same issue with,
But if we did it digitally, but just kept it,
maybe if we had
Amongst
something
us?
like that that just
Yeah.
shared between us,
Yeah.
so that you could see what the shout outs were.
yeah. Or if we could put up like in here, did you see a shout out today, or what did you see? You know, just
Oh,
a reminder, maybe
It's
some
closer
little.
to the TV. or
But
when we look at the
yeah,
presentation,
in the
like, oh
mind,
yeah,
but maybe.
don't forget to do your shout outs.
I
Yeah.
don't know if that would just end up being something we didn't look at, but.
Personally, like for weekly updates, for example, as a reminder, I have it on my calendar every Friday at the same
Yeah.
time to do weekly updates. No, I don't do it at the same time every Friday, but it at least
Reminds
goes off
you.
to remind me, and I do it at some point before they go out.
So
Okay.
could we put it on like the leadership calendar,
Yeah.
and it would, then it would send us all a reminder, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Leadership calendar. Okay, that's good. Okay, so the start date for the plan, we're looking at starting when we come back from spring break, being ready to roll with the plan on April the 29th. Any questions? Alright, this last piece I'm gonna go through kind of quickly. We were looking at best practices at our previous strategic PLC. So what needs to happen now is training for the staff. They need to know what the best practices are that we're looking for. The goal, I want it to be done in an embedded PD kind of way. And another goal is for us to see consistent implementation in the classroom. If I sent out this, my first thought was to send out the rubric that I created, and I think it had 5 of the best practices on there. I feel that the teachers are gonna see that that's another thing to do. So Joy and I will be in here, I think Lauren too, maybe every Wednesday when the teachers plan. So my idea is to share one best practice on a Wednesday. And as they are planning, talk about how that best practice looks in their lesson plans and how to implement it seamlessly into the instruction, because it's instructional strategies that teachers should be doing anyway. Some of them have started it or maybe stopped, like the I can statements that I saw in some of the classrooms. So this will be a reminder of the ones that we are focusing on each week. It will help them to get them into their lesson plans if we talk about it 1 week at a time, introducing one of the 5 that we have on that rubric. And then we want to see 80% of the staff consistently implementing the best practices by the end of the year when we're doing our walkthroughs. Any questions or ideas or suggestions about that plan?
I think that's good. I mean, I think keeping track is gonna be good because then we can at least, then we can see, are they doing it, are they not doing it, or if we have teachers who are doing it, maybe they can lead the teachers that aren't doing it, or
So
Can I get those testing materials?
12 o'clock.
Sorry.
I think what Joy was saying, is to push some of the teacher leaders. So if I'm out in the classrooms and I'm going to be talking about how to build vocabulary, can you close that door, please?
Yeah, sorry.
How to build vocabulary in the next PLC or the next planning day, then I may say, hey, Ms. Cook, I love that idea that you did with vocabulary. Would you be willing to share that? So I could introduce, this week we're focusing on the vocabulary, this best practice, and then Ms. Cook can share what she did. Then that way, it's not always us saying, it's some of the teacher leaders. So that's a great idea, I like that, and we'll include that. For our growth plan, we'll continue to do the observations. I don't think we get good results when we do with the rubrics. We haven't had a lot of data to pull up to show where we've looked at the rubrics, we looked at the walkthrough data, and that can kind of guide our next steps. This piece I've already shared. Introduce one best practice per week, share explicit strategies when they come in here, then schedule observations and model lessons. Before I go to the next part, the only thing I haven't touched on is that last piece, scheduling observations. When they're in here on Wednesdays, if they say they need help on that best practice that we're focusing on with how to track my student data or how to set objectives or how to embed vocabulary, then right then I'm gonna pull up my coaching document and can sign up for a model lesson. That way they get the support that they need right there.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to do mine through the best practice rubric. Once I revise it and move it beyond just the yes and no, and put a piece in there that may say not observed this time, and then under each bullet there'll be a place for notes. So I'm going to continue to use that as my data collection tool.
I don't know if I have access to that one, but like the math problem, the strategic PLC, the math problem, I went in to put in some data in that, and because so many of the things were required for you to answer them, then I was like, oh, I can't do this, and then I just quit. So like maybe if you made some of those not required,
okay,
and just
I'll
kept
do
the
that.
like main pieces that you really want us to give feedback on as required, and then the others are optional, because there wasn't, like you said, there wasn't necessarily a place to put not observed. So I felt bad putting like, no, they didn't do it. They may have done it when I left, or so then I just didn't, and that's bad. But then I just didn't fill it out because I was kind of like, I don't want to put no, because they probably did do it after I left. So maybe just a spot for not observed, or like maybe that question's not required, or.
And like one of the questions on the strategic was about the problem of the day being visible, and teacher's been out for 2 days, and I knew she was giving a CFA today, and I was like, I just don't want to fill it out because I know she does it every day, but it's not up today.
Right.
Okay, so that's good.
So I wish there were a note to say,
Yeah.
not today, but other days when I'm in.
I have seen it.
And this
I
is
have
the
been
reason why it's
observed.
not there today.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. I'll make those changes. And then in one of the observations that I did, I talked to the teacher to see, and you can't always do that, and I'm not going up to the teacher if they're in the middle of a lesson, This teacher came over and started talking to me. I said,
Okay.
while you're over here, let me ask you
Yeah.
a few questions. So I will put that piece on there. I think that'll make a difference. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Um,
Cause I think it's a great, I mean, I think the forum's great and it's good to have that to be able to track the data. But then maybe that'll get more, like, we'll fill it out more.
okay.
So you want us doing the best practice one?
No,
Or
not the
just
best practices yet. 'Cause
Okay.
I did some of the best practices rubric when I was doing our focus on the first three to collect some baseline data before on the front end. So we're not ready to use that until after I do the PD sessions with the teachers. But the other ones that we started with looking at the those three components of lesson plans, are they teaching the standards? Are they using manipulatives with their journals? And then whatever the third piece was, my mind is blank right now.
Problem of the day
Um,
and
Freckle, that they're implementing Freckle. So I'll look at those pieces and make sure we've got workable rubrics and that we feel comfortable, we've got a space to add in. I can't see who that is. Wait 1 minute. Okay. All right. So any other questions? If not,
You can.
I just thought this was a cute, a cute template. If not, that's it. And I apologize that we got started late due to the other issues that were
Yeah.
going on. We're
That's
beyond
your
our
fault.
control.
Sorry
No,
about
it
that.
was your fault. Beyond our control. Thank you for hanging in there.